Peter Lawton here, leadSMART Training Solutions. Just about a year ago, I met Mike Williams and Jill from Festool USA at a PDCA conference up in Salem, Mass. And as I was watching them show the painters in the conference all their wares about how the new dust extractor worked, and hearing them talk about all of this HEPA, the magic word in lead. And I looked at them and I said, Mike, you know, it all sounds good on a report, but are you just a lab rat, or have you ever seen this stuff work in the field? Wouldn't it be nice if we actually put you on a job site? Do you have the guts to let us record you? Do you have the guts to let us test your product and actually submit it to a laboratory for the results to see if you can put your money where your mouth is? And wouldn't you know, they took me up on it. So here we are today in a project in Jamaica Plain. Along with a good friend of ours, Catchlight Painting from Brookline, we have Cole Johannick here, someone who's been through our classes of RRP, as well as respirator fit testing, and we've worked with Catchlight for over a year. So we're going to put 3 different tests out there. The first one is going to show Cole working the old-fashioned way, the way many of us did for most of our careers, just sanding and using paper, using the sanding machine, seeing what the exposures that she's exposed to by using something called a personal air sampling pump. We'll take that cassette and send it off to a laboratory and get the results in about 5 days. We're also going to set it up using my favorite way of working, using water by misting the surfaces and using sanders in the presence of a negative air machine that we'll have hooked up and running to see if that extracts and reduces the exposures that she is breathing at the time that she's working. Relax, she will be in full respirators and fully protected. And then the third set is going to be doing the same type of practices again, using only the Festool machine, the dust extractor with their orbital sander. Let us get her dressed up and get her ready to roll. And so here we are, Cole looking just a little bit different than she did a few minutes ago, fully dressed up in her PPE, ready to rock and roll. I thought I'd let you know how we in fact found out that there was lead in this apartment. John McIsaac of ASAP Environmental provided his lead test here using an XRF gun, as only true lead inspectors and licensed in the state of Mass can do. So we're about to let Cole get going here. She's going to sand the baseboards, start sanding the window casings, just the way you and I have done 20 years ago. Just basically sandpaper and orbital sanders. So here we are in our second set of experiments. Cole is about to do the very same scope of work that we asked her to do earlier. Only this time we're going to add some lead-safe practices that were taught to me in 1997 by a gentleman by the name of John Zilka, the guru of lead. So here we're going to be adding misting of water onto our surfaces to keep them wet when we're working with them, to keep the airborne exposures to a minimum. But just in case that doesn't work, we're backing it up with the use of a negative air machine, which will keep the air exposures down to a bare minimum. And hopefully the results will show us that Cole didn't need what you see her dressed in now when she uses these lead-safe practices. You ready, Cole? And now, the final moment of truth. The third and final experiment that we're going to run. Cole will be finishing her scope of work in this room by sanding the baseboard, the windowsills and window sashes, just as she'd done in the previous experiments. Only this time we're going to be using the Festool dust extractor, the CT MIDI model. And one of the things I noticed in using the Festool orbital sanders is that as Cole plugged that into the machine and ran it for a second, of course the vacuum kicked on the moment she triggered the machine. But as she deactivated by letting go of the trigger, the vacuum kept running for a few seconds to empty out any contaminants that were left in the hose. Just a small feature I noticed during the setup. You ready, kiddo? Here we are at the end of our day. I'd like to thank Cole of Catchlight Painting from Brookline, Mass. for putting up with us on our job site. Check back with us in 5 days where we'll have the laboratory results. Welcome back, folks. It's been 5 days since we left our job site, and the results have come back from Pro Analytical Services out of Woburn, Mass. But I thought before we jump right into reading the results with you, I thought we'd review a few comparison numbers so we'd have an understanding of what these results truly mean. EPA has determined that when a painted surface contains 1 milligram per square centimeter of lead, it is illegal to work on without this training. In '97, when John Zilka was training me, I sat there as a tradesman saying, milligram? What are you talking about? And John looked at me and said, Pete, the problem is you don't understand metrics. And he took out a bag of sugar like we all see at our coffee shops. And he took 1 grain out of this bag and he said, Pete, I want you to cut this 10 times. And you're down to the areas that we're talking about. And that certainly gave me a scale of reference for size. So in order to find out if this home that we had chosen was in fact a lead home, we had a good friend from ASAP Environmental out of Dorchester, Mass, John McKaiser, come in and work with a machine called an XRF gun, which basically is a portable X-ray machine, to test the surfaces. And John's results came back showing us that in the baseboards and the doors and the windows and the walls in the kitchen and the pantry walls, they saw ranges from 8.9 milligrams to 9.9 milligrams. And my first reaction to that was that this home is off the chart, highest numbers that we could expect to see. And yet John told me that any home built in the 1920 to 1950 range, these are numbers they find quite often. So the exposures that Cole was faced when she was working, creating all this dust, how do we know that the quality of air in that room was safe or not? Well, we took 2 things into play here. First of all, OSHA has a number teamed up and partnered with medical science, and they refer to it as a permissible exposure limit. And PELs exist for most poisonal particulates out there. But it's just a number, if you will, a line in the sand that your body, if you're a healthy adult, ought to be able to tolerate. And when you cross that line, you need full protection. So that number for lead is 50 micrograms per cubed meter. And what's a cubed meter? We call it our breathing zone. So what they're saying is that cubed meter around my face, around my nose, cannot exceed a certain poison level. So you remember the 3 tests that Cole did on the job site for us? The first one was sanding with a machine, an orbital sander and a piece of sandpaper. The way we have most of our life, no protection whatsoever. And folks, those results, 335 micrograms. Almost 7 times the limit that medical science will tell you is a safe number. The second test was when Cole was working hand in hand with spray and mist, just nothing more than fancy water, misting water, and sanding it. But in the room, we had a negative air machine hooked up. And the results were there, 12 micrograms. Significant difference. Below the number that OSHA claims is the permissible exposure limit by far, even below their action level, where they say you must start to protect a worker. And that number is 30 micrograms. we were even below that. When we put her in the closet and we had her sanding away with that Festool machine, the results, 3.2 micrograms. Amazing. In fact, my wife told me she never thought she'd ever see this point in my life where I'd be speechless. I don't know what to say. Those numbers are so low, they're off the chart. In fact, the normal testing process that is used at a laboratory could not even detect the amount on the first pass. We actually had to have them resubmit the samples at a much more sensitive machine to see how low Festool went. So the conclusions are quite simple there. And the winner is you, a trained professional contractor who has learned how to by using lead-safe practices. You are able to reduce toxic particulates, you're able to reduce dangerous fibers, and you're also able to eliminate irritant dust. Something that the Healthy Homes organization says it is a goal that all of us remodelers should be striving for. Now, before we say goodbye, I have a couple of small things to say. Number one, this was not a scientific project. This was not a research project, something that on a professional level would have taken years to do. This was simply an analytical project to compare two different mechanical controlled systems and their effectiveness when we work in these dangerous areas of lead, for instance. It was not meant for any agency's use. It was simply meant for a clear direction when you, my brothers and sisters who are out there working with us every day, have choices to make that'll best protect you, your family, and those that you're providing the work for. So my friends, continue to work hard, work smart, work safe, and we all go home today. This is Peter Lawton from leadSMART Training Solutions saying thanks for listening.